Okay, my name is Rachel Frazier, and I'm a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade math and social studies teacher at Jones Fork Elementary in Knott County. And so my grant this year was The Whole World in My Hands, and it was making learning come to life through exploration. So I gained through this grant, I got a set of iPods, and I'd already gotten a set or 2 sets of iPads from previous KVET grants, but I could not use them for what I had already gotten from a previous grant. So last year at the end of the school year, I found an AEP grant and for teachers, and a lot of people hadn't ever heard about it. And I'd already done all my KVET stuff, and I found Google Cardboard at an ARI meeting towards the end of the year, and I was like, I really have got to get a hold of some of this, because it was more so I thought it was really neat for myself, and I really wanted to incorporate it into my classroom. So, how do I need this to go? Oh, there it goes. My objective was to participate in virtual field trips, connecting with my social studies content and my math content. And so my focus was just integrating technology. How can I put this technology into my classroom? What can I do with it? And mainly because everybody wants us to use technology. That's the big thing right now. And my kids love it. My kids feed off of when I get to use technology with them, and mostly because they know it better than I do. And so my major question for myself was, why or even how can I put this into my classroom and connect it back in with my content? So why must we integrate something that would take content time away? That's kind of scary when you're putting technology in your room, is because we know at the end of the year, I have to cover all of this. So how can I put technology in with it? And then how can you travel for field trips through devices and make the content actually seem real? And so my answer that I found was, welcome to the future. And this is, I've found a lot of really neat research that I'm getting ready to get into about virtual reality. So what exactly is virtual reality? Virtual reality is a computer-generated simulation of a 3-dimensional image or an environment that can be interacted with in a seemingly real or physical way using special equipment. And really, what I have found with this virtual reality in my classroom is you can do everything but smell and touch. It's really neat. And then in student-friendly terms, it's an app that can let you go somewhere that you have never been and fully experience it without leaving my classroom. I found this neat little picture that I wanted to add in there, and the number one way of why to use virtual reality is to travel and explore places all over the world without leaving your classroom, and that was my main focus of this. There was some other really cool ones. I used number 5 a lot, to time travel to key events and places from the past. I teach social studies. That's a big thing that I have really found to struggle in social studies, is how can I relate to my 5th grade students something that happened 200 years ago, because they don't understand that there were not cell phones 200 years ago, or that they wrote with a feather pen. That's really hard for them to connect to. So through virtual reality, they have got a better feel of some of these things. Number 6, explore within the human body. That's something that I don't teach science, but there's tons of science activities you can also do with virtual reality. But there's a new thing that's coming through with virtual reality that I've recently found out, where you can, with the materials I have gotten, where you can see a human heart, and it's like you can hold it, and you can put your hand out with the goggles on, and you can actually have a human heart in your hand, or you can actually see a tornado in your classroom. So there's a lot of cool things that are still coming out with all of this. So some data that I found, I want to focus over here first. In a survey of 1,000 teachers, 85% of those teachers found that virtual reality would be very useful in their classroom, but then only 2% actually use it. And that was kind of crazy to me, because this is really the best thing that I have come in contact with for my social studies instruction. And then the opportunities that you can simulate experiences. So, and they put some different examples on this little picture, like you can fly with the Wright brothers, or you can explore outer space. You can actually see science experiments actually happen in front of their eyes, and you can travel to Egypt. That's something I may never get to do, so I can actually take my 5th grade students there. Over here is some data on what subject areas you mainly can use it in, science being at 82%, and there's tons of science stuff. We've got to kind of play around in our free time with the science, but I mainly use it with history and social studies, and so those were both at 81%, art at 60%, English and language 54%, which kind of surprised me. I thought that one you could use it with anything in reading. And then engineering at 49%, and I kind of threw math into that myself because that's the hardest area I have found it to be to kind of correlate with. So my plan of action, this was like my holy grail of virtual reality, was Google Expedition. So when I found the Google Cardboard, I kind of started researching about how I can use it in my classroom. And Google actually came out with an entire program that is extremely teacher-friendly with this. And Google Expeditions, they have actually over 500 expeditions that you can take your kids on now, and they are teacher-led. So they give you information about the place. They give you 3 questions for each place that you go to. So they give you that low question, medium question, and higher order thinking questions. So we've used this app more than anything else with their Google Cardboard. It covers all of our topics that we've covered in social studies so far. There is an expedition for them to go on. And then I've got some pictures of that. So here I've got my kids actually interacting with the Google Cardboard using it. These are some expeditions we went on. So we have the American Revolution. It actually took you to a place where they had recreated a cabin from the American Revolution, and you can look all around, and they've got artifacts from that time. Over here you have the story of the Constitution, and it had Independence Hall. That was one of our coolest ones that my kids found to be really engaging because you got to see Independence Hall, but then all around it were all these modern buildings. So it was as it is today. So it really is like you get to go there. We saw this is a dormitory room on Ellis Island, so they got to see that when we started talking about immigration. And then U.S. monuments. And on each of these, there's different slides. So you don't just get to see the Lincoln Memorial, but you get to go all through Washington, D.C. So it's really cool. And then this is a teacher view. And I actually brought my Google Cardboard today and my iPods because I wanted some of you all to get the actual feel of it, but I can't connect it to the MacBook. So I did screenshot what the teacher view looks like. So you have all of this reading that you can slide up. You can put it on pause so that they can't move it if you're trying to talk and you want them to listen. And then if you see the smiley face, that is what the student is looking at. So I have 5 iPods, so usually I should have 5 smiley faces looking at where I want them to look at. And if they're not there, I can say, hey, I only got 4. Where's my 5th one? What are you looking at? Because you need to be looking at the circle. And you can even draw on here. So up here, I can draw, I can write, I can show them what I want them to look at. And then I used Google Expeditions in math. And again, math is the hardest thing that I have found to really connect it with. But recently we had a group of foreign exchange students from China and Vietnam come to our school and talk to our kids. So while they were up there, they were talking about the Great Wall of China, and I knew there was a Great Wall of China Google Expedition. I've been dying to go on myself. So I got on and I found a worksheet that had them doing math in the real world, and so they got to calculate how long the Great Wall of China is. They got to do some adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with it. And then I actually took them to the Great Wall of China, and I done this with my 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, that was one of the only ones they got to do with my VR. I mainly used it with 4th and 5th grade, but just the oohs and ahs of getting to be in China. And that day was really neat for them because I kind of started out, I was like, let's go, we're going to go to China today. And I have a classroom Alexa, so we talked to Alexa and we found out how far it took us to get to China, or how long it would take us to get to China. And she told us it was a 15-hour flight. So my kids were like, we can't go today. And I said, no, we're going right now. We're staying in our seats and you're going to get to go to China. So just watching them look around and listening to them and interacting with each other over getting to go somewhere like that was really cool. 2 other apps that I've used some are Google Maps and then the New York Times virtual reality. And that Google Maps, I use this mainly with 4th grade and Kentucky history, because if you teach social studies, you know that Kentucky resources are really hard to find that aren't from the 90s. So with this, we actually got to go to Natural Bridge, and we got to go to Mammoth Cave, and those are places that some of my kids will possibly never get to go to. So we got to go there. And then the New York Times VR, we done a couple of those, but this one was really hard for my younger kids. This is a great resource for middle school and high school. It's more current events and what's going on today. But I did find some that I used with the Industrial Revolution and how to make a car. There was a series on there for that. And so these are some pictures, 4th grade. This is Natural Bridge on Google Maps. And so they got to use that one. And then over here was the New York Times, the making of. So we used that one for the Industrial Revolution. This one was like the making of a Ford motor car. To monitor this, I done my ticket out the door. I have an emoji door, so I've got big emojis on my doors, and so they done a exit slip every time we used VR about if you feel like it helped you, or if you don't like VR. I'm not crazy about VR myself. It kind of makes me sick. I like the whole idea of it, and I can do it for a little while, but once you take it off, it really can make you sick. But most of my kids don't mind any of that. So I got a lot of the VR was pretty cool, and then I love VR. So my strengths and limitations. So student engagement, of course, was a strength, and connecting it to real life. They were asking better questions when they actually got to see these places. And so that was a big thing for me because, of course, students struggle asking those questions. So they were asking better ones. My limitation mainly is that I only had 5 iPods. And because I brought a Google Cardboard with me so you can kind of see it. So you can't. It has to be a smaller phone that fits inside of it or an iPod. So I only got 5 of those through my grant, and I had some old iPhones that I had recently had that I kind of cleared off and brought to school. So that's my next step, is gaining more iPods. That way I have enough of these for every child. I got 30 of these through AEP. And so I'd like to get more iPods because it is harder for them to pass it around and get to be the one to see it first whenever I put it on there. And then creating VR, that's kind of a newer thing that they can do now. That's kind of harder for us in Knott County to get to create a virtual reality because, I guess we could do some things that are in our local communities, but making these big ones is much harder. And then the augmented reality, that's the one where you can hold the heart and see an actual tornado in your classroom. This one, the Google Expedition has a Pioneer program, and I actually got an email this weekend that I'm in the running for getting to be a part of the Pioneer program, and that was me just emailing Google monthly that I would really like to be a part of this Pioneer program where Google will actually come to our school and do some of these newer things with my kids.